Hello and welcome back to LexCon Crypto. We are excited that you're here. We are quickly approaching the new year, and what a year 2022 has been in crypto. We are looking forward to the new year. I think there are many investors looking forward to hopefully a summer thaw as we approach the new year. But we will have to wait and see what occurs there. Today, on our show to help us through this conversation, we have the CEO of NetSource, Niki Marie Eckardt, is joining us today from Alberta, Canada. I believe that's correct, and
That's correct, yes.
we're excited to have her on, and excited to share this episode with you. So, Niki, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me on your show, Andrew. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we, as we've sort of made our way through various episodes and various topics, we've come through a lot of what I'm going to call real low points in crypto through 2022, and there have been some real big ones. So just sort of, and I know this is off the cuff and just sort of out of the blue here, but what are some of the real low points that stick out to you from 2022 in the crypto world as you sort of think about it? Any headlines or moments sort of stick out for you?
Well, I think it's obvious. The Terra Luna collapse would be one of the biggest ones. FTX collapse would be another one. I think that we have seen a lot of bad actors in the space that have really put a bad kind of a shadow on things, and it's created what I wouldn't call really a crypto winter. I'd call it a crypto ice age. And it seems that is going to be something that is going to continually push into 2023. But I think those are probably some of the key situations that have come up. And I think it's really causing a lot of problems for regulatory commissions to come with true policy that's going to actually bring the crypto industry to the forefront and starting to utilize that even more and more. And I mean, obviously, we also hear about CBDCs. We hear a lot about intervention from a lot of different regulatory commissions. So I know that's kind of a big sort of a statement, but that's kind of hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah, no, for sure. So if those are some of the low points, are there any silver linings that you saw? From any disaster, there always seems to be some silver linings, some good that can come out of it. Do you see any silver linings that come out of 2022, or was it just totally black, totally dismal for you?
It's so funny, Andrew, when you ask that question, because the first place my mind goes, and of course, obviously, I'm a seasoned lady, so I've been around for a while, reminds me a lot of the internet when it first came out and how all of the policy was going on and companies getting sued all over the place and all of that. And I'll classify it that probably the most proactive thing that I saw is we're cleaning out the system. And with that clean out, it's going to help our community move forward, I think, in a very more proactive way.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that there's definitely been a clean out of bad actors, as you said. There's certainly been a lot of entities that shouldn't exist, and they've been obviously exposed for what they are. I wonder if you wouldn't just sort of think about and share with us sort of your thoughts as you look forward now into 23. What are some of the things that you would expect to see and maybe hope to see?
Well, I think we have to be very aware of what our current economic situation is around the world. So when you kind of ask that question, we're kind of interconnected in with the regular stock market. We're connected in a lot of ways of how the world economy is. And I think we have to realize that, and I am very much pro Bitcoin. I'm very much pro on blockchain and all of that. But I think we also have to be realize and be aware that I think Bitcoin is going to drop quite a bit from where it is now. But that's actually a good thing. Okay. What I do see is more institutional investors coming into the forefront. There was a lot in 2021, 2022 at the start, and then they were cleaned out because of fear of obviously all of the bad actors in that. So saying that, my kind of predictions coming forward is I'm hoping that we get some generalized regulation around stable coins. I think that we will probably see legislation coming into play from regulatory commissions in regards to the usage of certain types of coins. Obviously, we've got the XRP Ripple case in front of the SEC. I would think that that should come to an end point, which could create a lot of change in the space, which will be proactive and positive. I think that we always have to remember with technology that it's a significant changing technology that's creating a whole new essence of how we do money, how our payment rail systems work, how everything works around the world. And so we have so many different things occurring. So I believe anyway that 2023 will be the year of more significant change. I think we will start to see regulation in the area. I think it's a really good thing. And I think another thing that we're going to see too is that with the way the economy is, future developments, say around mid-year of next year, I think we're going to start to see some changes in a lot more countries utilizing blockchain and cryptocurrencies. I do see that probably being something that keeps moving forward. We take a look at El Salvador. I mean, they're already looking at it, doing this. We're finding more other countries coming into the play and into the space. And of course, obviously in turn too, a lot of the institutions, no matter how much FUD is thrown out there about that, institutions are bringing crypto on fast and at a very fast rate. You take a look at Visa, you take a look at Goldman Sachs, you take a look at BlackRock, you take a look at all of these different institutions. So positive speaking, I think it keeps moving forward that way. Economically, I think we're going to get our butts kicked massively throughout the next year. I'll just be honest with that. But I think overall, by the end of the year, I think we're going to really see some big positives.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to me that it seems like institutional adoption actually increased after some of these large these large bottoms that we saw. And I agree with you. I think that it actually was a good thing to have some of these implosions, and probably a few more need to occur, because the market has been essentially driven by speculation. And as we see the market mature, I think part of that is a definite regulatory framework that institutions can have that liability comfort in order to be able to practice in and be able to work in and plan in, and all the things that are necessary for institutions to put hundreds of millions and billions of dollars into the marketplace. So I think that obviously, as the market starts to mature, that will be a benefit. One of the concerns that I have, and I wonder sort of your take on it, is what I've been sort of calling reactionary regulation. So, like we've seen, like Elizabeth Warren, for instance, champion a piece of legislation now in the Senate, and there's others who it sort of seems like have sort of treated crypto as a joke until there's a problem that perhaps they can capitalize on politically, and suddenly have some sort of like reactionary regulation. But as we see, many times the regulation they bring forward doesn't even address the problem to which they're claiming to solve. And my hope is, and my thought is that we actually have some real thoughtful regulation that is actually helpful, that is necessary, and hopefully is helpful to the greater, broader adoption. But how do you see regulation sort of shaping up? Maybe even from the UK and from Canada and from some of these leading countries, Singapore, some of these places where we see adoption and the regulation starting to take shape. Do you see it coming in sort of a reactionary way, or do you think that there is hope for a thoughtful and effective and useful regulatory framework that emerges?
Well, I think probably one of the things that we have to realize is that a lot of it is built around the geopolitical situations that are going on in each individual country. So obviously, Canada has a different mindset around, just current situations and that. So when we take a look at Canada, and I can speak for all of these because our company does work in all of these these areas. So in Canada, we're much more inclined to say, okay, the community, come talk to us. What's going on? What do you feel or think is
Mm.
important? What is that type of a situation? Okay. And even saying that in Canada, we get the FTXs coming into play, which are these bad actors. It's manipulation. But come on, Bernie Madoff did the same dang thing and there was no crypto. So it's the same thing. So can we put that aside? So in Canada, I see it being somewhat more at the forefront of saying, okay, guys, what do you see here? What should we do? How should we approach this? And then we're working together more as a team. In the US, you see the backlash because obviously politics in the US is quite a bit different than it is in Canada. And sadly, I would say that anything that's current and new is weaponized. And so we're seeing that in the US where it's being weaponized. And like you talk about Janet Yellen and you talk about Elizabeth Warren bringing in policies. And there are, I think, bipartisan, bills and that are coming to the forefront where we've got both sides of the house that are really interested in trying to make something work. But yet in turn too, because there is so much differentiation from, other more extreme areas in the government that are looking at it as being that, okay, well, how can we utilize this to better our side? And so is it a political thing or is it basically a non-political? So when we talk about regulation in the US, for example, what is that exactly? And if you can keep the bipartisan in place and keep the rest of the crap out, okay, I think that's going to be a big factor in how policy moves forward because obviously the majority of the locations around the world, what do? They look at US based policy and they say, okay,
Yes.
well, if this is what the US is doing, then this is what we're going to do. But in turn, too, many countries are starting to see that, okay, we can now, and I'll say it this way, from that policy, we also have to bring in CBDCs. We also have to bring in and look at a lot of other areas because now we're separating or could separate from the US dollar being dominant in the world. How are countries getting around sanctions? So when we talk about policy and we talk about that, a lot of other factors are going to determine what that policy is because obviously US does not want to give up their power. They don't want to give up the petrodollar. They don't want to give up. Now all of a sudden you've got a multitude of different cryptocurrencies out there or potentially CBDCs that can now, operate without using the US dollar. So I think when you talk about regulation and policy, it's a lot more complicated than just coming up and saying, here, we can put a regulation in place. And this is the way it is.
Yeah.
Countries can get around sanctions now.
Well, I think that's part of the. I think that's part of the issue. The crypto industry has been saying to Washington, like, give us some regulatory framework, and there have been very few political leaders, especially in Washington, who have been willing to engage because of the complexity of the issue. It's not just that it's a new technology; it's that it has global economic impact and effects, and this is what I would consider to be in a long time the first real credible viable threat to the dominance of the US dollar, and for the US political enterprise. It is a great threat. It is a great risk, and I think that they are really starting to feel the damage and the threat that this technology and this new financial wave is bringing to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you in regards to that because one of the things I also see too is that what we create in the blockchain and cryptocurrency is taking the power back to the people and it's
Right.
taking it away from those in government positions. And of course, obviously, we all know that they try to keep the control of everything. And so I think that it's very easy for people like Kevin O'Leary or anybody else to go in and say, well, come on, all we just need is policy and things are good. It doesn't work that way.
No.
It doesn't work that way at all. And when you talk about this type of regulation and that needs to come into play into the space, and I agree that bad actors have to be removed out of the space
Of
with
course.
the legislation. And but yet in turn too, when you're taking away powers and giving it to the people, that's scary for them.
Right.
They don't know how to handle this. So when again, with regulation, you can go in a multitude of different directions and talk about regulation and say, well, just slap this in here. But what are the implications of the regulation? How
Yeah.
is it going to change the very essence of who we are as individuals and how we do peer-to-peer transactions? We don't need the government anymore. We don't need the banks anymore.
Yeah.
That's another big factor in regulation. And this is why how they've always controlled the system before, even was with accredited investors.
Right.
Keep the rich rich. We
Right.
don't want the general public to be able to have that type of power and control. And what's the excuse all the time? We don't want grandma to lose her money.
That's right.
Right? Well, sorry, there's a whole entire thing called the middle class
Right.
that aren't accredited investors, that still have money, that still have the ability to do peer-to-peer transactions, and
Yeah.
all of those types of things. So regulation, again, is really based around these people in power not having a clue or being forced into a corner, which I truly believe that's what they do. And this is why the SEC is just like bouncing all over the place
Yes.
and trying to play, this big policing force, and not really coming up with anything that is going to help the process move forward.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting to see. So I have two comments sort of about that. I do think it's hopeful that there is some bipartisan action because it seems like to me, for the first time in a long time, there are serious, level-headed legislators on both sides of the aisle who are taking these issues seriously. I think Elizabeth Warren is an extremist who is so far off the beaten path that like neither side really can come into line with her. But I think somebody like Patrick McHenry, I think that there's obviously a loss in the Senate of Pat Toomey, but his influence is still going to be felt. Who is willing to work on both sides? There are a number of Democratic legislators now coming who are interested in working together. I do think that there's actually hope for some sort of a bipartisan action, and if there's any benefit to the collapses of FTX and Luna and others, it is that they are motivated and there is public attention on there being some work done. And I think that there is a way to move forward. What I'm hoping is that there isn't this sort of singular, massive, all-consuming, trying to solve every problem with one piece. I think rather it should be a large vision but small action. So taking small actions, weighing the implications of those actions, and setting it out. What I'd love to see is for someone, maybe the Financial Services Committee or something, to lay out for us a 20-year vision for finance in the United States, and to say, here's sort of where we're going. Here is how that this could occur. Here's how we mesh with the world, globally. Here's where the dollar ends up playing. Just sort of that, and then the legislative framework that sort of would lead us or guide us to that place. I know that all they can think about is the next 2 years and getting reelected and trying to stay in power. And so any sort of forward-looking type of policy is out of the question. But I'd love to see some of that type of action.
I would love to see that too. I'm sometimes a pessimist. I am an optimist too. So it kind of has that blend. But my first initial reaction is that in order to be able to see change, we have to go to the top, and the top is not the U.S. legislators. You're talking about companies, companies like BlackRock.
Yes, for sure.
Those are the individuals that have to start to make change in the forefront. And
For sure.
I'm not a big fan of Larry Fink. I'm going to be quite honest, and I'm not. When you're controlling that much asset, where is that bipartisan thought process? I mean, obviously, it's all based around making money, taking over companies, doing everything. I mean, who does the Fed? You look at Jerome Powell. How many times have they gone to BlackRock and said, "What do we? How do we get bailed out here?"
For sure.
So I think in order for us to be able to put in true, consistent policy, we actually have to bring it down to the human level, the average person. And I think the messaging has to come from that, because if we continually allow individuals such as Larry Fink, such as Jerome Powell, such as the IMF, such as the
Sure.
World Bank Settlement,
Yep.
all of
Goldman.
these,
Yep. Others. Yep.
they're not going to do it for us. They're going to do it for them. It's the
Right.
whole essence of why Bitcoin was developed, was to take away those powers. People, I think, right now, the most critical thing that I see to bring in legislation and do it correctly, okay, is to have better education to the common people, those individuals that are out there. Throw away the FUD, throw away all the rest of the crap, get people understanding what is in front of them and how beneficial it could be to them. Because we need to stand up as the people in order to be able to get correct legislation in place. I do agree with you. We still have to go through the governmental process. We still have the SEC. We still have to work through all of that crap.
Right.
But it's the old case like this. How many of them are there? How many people are there that are in those positions of government? Okay. Tell me that if not 250 million people in the US and another 25 million in Canada and the rest of the people around the world said, hold it, wait a minute, stand up, fight for our rights, do what we need to do here, right? That's going to truly push legislation forward. And so what does it boil down to? I believe it boils down to the young voter.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it's going to come from. I'll say this, got to get rid of all of us cronies. The baby boomers, all of those individuals that can't think outside the box. Our youth are the ones that will control that. Sadly, we have legislators in place right now that are those types of older individuals. So I know I'm kind of going off on a little bit of a spew here,
Go
but
for it.
I think we need to make sure that when we want to make change, we, the people, don't realize the power we have.
Right. You're right.
Okay. And in order for us to be able to take power back, we need to stand up together. We need to break down We need to break down all those silos. We have to unify and become one in order to push it forward. That's why blockchain is amazing. That's why crypto is amazing. And I think you have to always remember too. And again, I'm going to go back to the start of the internet again, which I had a company that was just building in 1992. Put up a banner and every person on the planet would click on it right away because they'd never seen one before. It's very similar to that.
Right.
The internet scared the shit out of everybody. They scared the shit out of the legislators. They scared the shit out of everything. Then there was adoption. Then it moved forward. And I think the other thing that's going to be so, so important, talking about legislation and everything else, is having people understand that their own private information can be now held with them, not held with large corporations.
Right.
So again, we could go on for hours talking about this, but
jump with me into the I think what you're starting to scratch the surface of is tokenization. Mm-hmm. And most of the conversation that I have heard has been around institutions or companies tokenizing. I've seen some people saying 2023 could be the year of tokenization, sort of how we move away from the cryptos and altcoins, and it's becoming much more into tokenization. But what you're talking about is an individual perhaps gaining power through tokenization. Maybe it's real estate or other assets. Maybe it's their own personal identity, things like that. Talk to me a little bit about what that looks like and how that might have an impact on our world, really.
Well, I think the one thing, and I kind of talked about it before, I think tokenization is going to be really important. But I think one thing that we have to realize is that the powers that be force people through regulation to be accredited investors.
Yes.
Okay. And this is one of the biggest problems, even with tokenization right now. And we talk about tokenization. I believe the whole stock market's going to go tokenization. Everything is going to be tokenized sooner or later. Okay. Record keeping is so much better, so much clearer, and we could go on. But I think one of the things that I want to really talk about is the DeFi. decentralized finance, the ability to do peer-to-peer transactions without having intermediaries. I think that's critical. And I think, I think that you and I should be able to go together and say, hey, you're down in, wherever you are in the US, and I'm somewhere in Canada. We can do a peer-to-peer transaction without having any intermediaries.
Yeah.
Okay. And when we talk about tokenization, think of this. We can tokenize everything. Okay. But how would that change our lives for the better? Okay. Think of this. How much service fees do you pay over your lifetime to middlemen? Now, take that total amount, and if you could do it through tokenization to remove the middleman on any type of product or anything, you would probably keep millions of dollars, maybe millions of dollars, in your pocket that you could utilize to build generational wealth for yourself and your family and your kids and everything.
Right.
So when we talk about tokenization, this is something that I think we should all be looking at the forefront and saying that. And when we talk about decentralization with tokenization, that's exactly what we do. We have that ability to do peer-to-peer. Now, the biggest issue with this is that I see, and this is why it's so important for the youth to be able to vote and to push these types of things forward, to go to granddad or grandma and say, set up a wallet. It's almost impossible. Right? But that's part of tokenization. You have to have the wallets. You have to have
the
all
seed
of the
phrase.
Right. And seed phrases and everything else. Now, there's already, and within our tech company and that too, we're already looking at new ways to get around that side of it, whether it be full integrated retinal scans instead of a seed phrase, or, and those types of things. And the technology is slowly growing like anything. We have to push it through. But eliminating those seed phrases, still having the control of the wallet. And this is the thing that where we have to be also very, very careful about, because as much as we like to think that things are going to be DeFi and things are going to be peer-to-peer in the future around tokenization and everything else, we also have to realize that this is all software.
Yes.
It can all be monitored. Yeah. And trust me, military grade, encryptions and all of those types of things, they already break that shit.
Right.
Okay. So as much as we want to say that we would want peer-to-peer transactions, there's a lot of bad actors out there. We already discussed that. So there's a lot of crime. Sadly, for every person that's trying to do good, there's another two people that are maybe trying to do bad.
Right.
Okay. And we have to be aware of that. That's why we have those types of securities. But even when you take a look at it, when our prime minister put in the Emergencies Act around the trucker convoys and that sort of thing in Parliament and all of that.
Yes.
They could freeze bank accounts.
They were.
What did they do? They froze digital wallets.
Yeah.
That one statement there, freezing a digital wallet.
Right.
Right. Now what? So as much as we talk about all of these good things, and it's always so funny when we talk about this because many people think that it's just very, very easy. We'll just do DeFi, or we're just going to do this. But for every action, there's going to be a reaction. And sadly, as you've already mentioned, everybody is very reactive. Nobody's proactive. We only are reactive individuals, right?
That's right.
So again, it's not only the technology, it's the psychology behind all of this too. And those are interconnected, which then brings us into AI.
Yes.
And how AI can now interconnect even into the tokenization, can even interconnect into blockchain, and how that is. And we haven't even begun to scratch the surface on quantum.
Oh, I know.
And security. So now you're talking about how could quantum break down the chains.
Right. That's right.
And another funny thing that I talk about, and you will probably remember this, Andrew. We talk about Bitcoin, we talk about all of these types of things, but Bitcoin, I'll stick with Bitcoin because that's the biggest one, right? That gives us that opportunity to have that essential freedom.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's something. I remember back when Roosevelt went to all of the people in the US and said, give us your gold. You
Right.
cannot have gold anymore.
Right.
Could they do that with Bitcoin?
Of course.
You know,
Of
so
course.
we have a lot of individuals out there, and I'm very proactive on all of this. But
Right.
I think one of the things that a lot of people don't do is they don't step back and see the overall picture, the
Right.
macro picture of everything that's going on.
Well, like you just said, freezing digital wallets. I mean, especially in a blockchain environment. Yes, you can own your Bitcoin, and yes, you can hold it into cold storage and do all the various things that you want to do. But the second that wallet address, right, is activated on the blockchain, you're exposed, and so there's certainly ways for them to be able to either confiscate or freeze or just make not usable. I mean, there's all sorts of
Mhm.
tactics, and that these things are already built in. Like, I remember reading and the revelation of a few years ago, like that there's a back door into Facebook, or there's a back door into this or that, or even Snowden. And it was sort of, to me, I was like, well, of course there is. Why?
Right.
Right? Like, of course, I don't understand why this is. And so right, like Coinbase didn't just get listed as a public company by accident. I mean, there are concessions that every one of these companies in a global way has to make, which is
Yep.
what brings you and sort of the discussion back around to Bitcoin, and it's going to be very interesting as we sort of come to a conclusion. This has been awesome, and I've really enjoyed it, and really want to continue our conversation. But there's something about the new year, and I was just reading today how Michael Saylor is talking about MicroStrategies developing and really building out the Lightning Network and
Mhm.
making Bitcoin much more accessible and much more usable, and finding opportunities for institutional adoption of Bitcoin specifically. As you look forward, do you see Bitcoin sort of continuing to be, I think, continuing to be a store of value, but also relatively marginalized in its utility, or do you see Bitcoin really being able to start to achieve maybe a broader adoption and usability in the overall general marketplace?
That's a really loaded question.
I know, I know.
Okay, I'm going to answer it as easily as I possibly can. Firstly, I wouldn't trust my sailor with how far I could spit. That's
Sure.
one. Two, the biggest fear obviously is institutionalization. Now, think about this. The figures are right now retail investors that have or owners of Bitcoin here 18%.
Right,
That's it.
right,
Institutions own the rest of it. That's
right,
one. Two. Okay. If you take a look at the analytics around nodes, okay, 2 years ago, Bitcoin nodes were I can't remember exactly, but I think there was somewhere around 70% or 80%, of people utilizing and getting nodes, and more people coming on. Okay, that's dropped by 55% already.
yeah,
Okay, so there's actually less nodes now out there to do transactionary basis. The other thing that I don't think a lot of people understand around the Lightning Network is, and how Bitcoin is distributed through nodes. So one node wants to say move 10 Bitcoin to another node. Well, that other node has to have 10 Bitcoin in order to be able to have the process move forward,
right,
which is the problem because the only ones that actually can do that are institutional investors.
right.
Retail investors can't do that. How many retail investors sitting at their desks right now have 10 Bitcoin sitting there?
Yeah,
Okay.
less than
So they
1%.
can't be a node.
Right.
So now what are we doing? We're actually centralizing something that's not supposed to be centralized.
Hmm.
Okay. And so the Lightning Network and Michael Saylor saying he's building it out and everything else, you always have to ask yourself, is he doing it for him and his buddies?
Right,
Or is he doing it for the betterment of overall society?
right.
I mean, what did he do? He just bought another 2,000 Bitcoin or some silly thing just recently,
Right.
So again, we always have to be really, really aware. You can go to the Bitcoin conferences in Miami, and you can go to all these places and all of the hype and everything else and this and that and how wonderful it is. But once again, you have to step back and see it for what it truly is and understand how these systems work.
Right.
You can't just take it for granted that, oh, the world is going to be wonderful and great here. And this is why I think it's so, so important, once again, to ensure the fact that education is primary in the movement of our technology. Okay. I would say this: responsible innovation.
Right.
That's something I think that's critical. Okay. It's that responsible innovation, and who has the control of the innovation, and are they being responsible with it?
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't learned anything about climate. We haven't learned anything about, we could go on and a whole bunch of stuff, because once again, where are we at? Being,
Yeah.
reactive instead of proactive.
Yeah. Well, I think you've brought a great focus on and highlighted, several times throughout our conversation here, just the idea of empowering people, of empowering the average citizen, the person who's working hard every day and trying to just live their life, and how that is overshadowed by the imperial elite that sort of sit on top of us each and every day and rule our governments. So I really appreciate your perspective, Niki. It's been very refreshing for me and helpful in my perspective of things as well. So I just want to say thank you very much for joining us today, for being on the show. If my listeners wanted to follow you or contact you or find out more about you and your company, how could they do that?
Well, you can just get a hold of me on LinkedIn. Obviously, I'm there. We're doing a lot of publishing of articles and that sort of thing. And you can reach out on LinkedIn if you want. It's just Niki Marie Eckardt, Eckardt. Reach out. Be more than happy. And that we're right in the development of all of our new websites and everything else that are coming up as well. So I'm always happy to talk to people and work with people and in consulting and that sort of thing. So
yeah, exciting. That's great. Very, very good. And I'll definitely I'll tag Niki in the LinkedIn post when I post this, as that's where the majority of my audience comes from. So I'll make sure we post there and make sure that there's a connection made. I want to say just thank you again so much. Wish you a very happy new year, and look forward to speaking to you again soon, Niki. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you so much, Andrew. I really appreciate it. Happy New Year to you and all of your audience.
Thank you.